Okay, we are going live now. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Ryan Flores. I'm the Technical Services Librarian at the Westchester Public Library. Tonight, we will be presenting Cultural Connections with Latinx Culture to Nature with Xochitl Lopez. Xochitl, born and raised on the south side of Chicago, she started her conservation journey as a Student Conservation Association AmeriCorps Natural Resource Concern at, I might butcher this, is it Monocacy National?
Monocacy.
Monocacy National Battlefield in Frederick, Maryland. After getting a taste of working outdoors and helping the environment, she wanted to find a similar experience back home. To her surprise, there was an environmental community right under her nose. And she's currently, she has led for over 4 years a Latinx Volunteer Day at Possum Hollow Woods near LaGrange Park on 31st Street. So without further ado, Xochitl, take it away.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you all for joining me today. Okay, so my name is Xochitl Lopez. I use she, her, pronouns. I'm the volunteer steward at Possum Hollow. And today I'm gonna talk about our Latinx Volunteer Days. So just a general overview of what I'll be talking about today. I first wanna do a land acknowledgement. We'll talk about Possum Hollow, the who, what, where, when of that. We'll talk a little bit about Latinx spaces and then talk about the different partnerships that we have. So I'm going to read the Forest Reserves of Cook County's land acknowledgement. The Forest Reserves of Cook County acknowledges that we are on the lands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi, as well as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki peoples. As a land management agency, we acknowledge that we have played a role in shaping the histories of local Native Americans by acquiring this land. We also recognize, share, and celebrate their immemorial ties to this land. We commit ourselves to developing deeper partnerships that advocate for the progress, dignity, and humanity of many diverse Native Americans who still live and practice their heritage and traditions on this land today. Territory acknowledgements is a way to insert awareness of Indigenous presence and land rights into our everyday lives. It can be a subtle way to recognize the history of colonialism and a need for change in settler colonial societies. Chicago is home to the country's third largest urban Native population. And if you'd like to learn more about the Forest Reserves of Cook County's effort to collaborate with organizations and programs serving Native American communities, you can check out the link, the bottom link, or you could just Google FPCC land acknowledgement. There's another website, or native-land.ca is a website where you can type in the area that you're living in or the region you're from. I put in the Westchester Public Library in Possum Hollow, and you can find out what territories or what tribes territories you are on. And what came up was the tribes of Kickapoo, Peoria, Kaskaskia, the Potawatomi, the Miamia, and Xochitl Sakowin. And the group that manages this website is called Native Land Digital. And they basically strive to map Indigenous lands in a way that changes, challenges, and improves the way people see history and the present day. They hope to strengthen the spiritual bonds that people have with the land, its people, and its meaning. I like this website because it's a guide that can help you, that gives you information on different Native nations, the different treaties that are, the different treaties for the different areas and the languages that are spoken. This website also prompts people to, prompts people with questions. And one of them was like, how does this land acknowledgement relate to the work that we're doing? In terms of ecological restoration, we strive to get our ecological biodiversity as close as we can to pre-European settlement. And so I think that also should include a shift in non-Indigenous people's relationship with the land in order to make a lasting change. So the story of Possum Hollow starts with my co-steward, friend, mentor, Raquel Garcia Alvarez. I just want to boost her up because she's an amazing person. She's one of Marin's Magazine's 16 impactful and influential eco-warriors, making a difference in the environment in 2021. She founded the Environmentalists of Color, and that's a network of leaders of color involved in many aspects of environmental issues. She also, the Latinx Volunteer Days was Raquel's idea, and it's something she pushed for 4 years before she got the green light in 2018. At that time, I was working part-time as a stewardship program aide, working with stewards across Cook County. Raquel asked me, she's like, hey, would you wanna help me co-host Latinx Volunteer Days? And it was a double yes for me because one, it was kind of part of my job. So, you know, it was like, I can't really turn this down, and the other part of me, it was a yes because I believe in creating spaces for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And one reason why I know why these spaces are important is in college, I kind of got culture shocked attending a majority white and suburban student population. And so I'm from Chicago. While Chicago is a very segregated city, it is diverse. I'm used to being around people who are different from me, being people who do look like me. So going to college was a big shock. And I was definitely drawn to all the multicultural groups in college. I was part of the multicultural programming board, president for Latinos Unidos. It was a need of familiarity that I was seeking. And so that's kind of how I see Latinx Volunteer Days, because it's just a need for that familiarity in nature spaces. So this is a map of Possum Hollow. It is located west of LaGrange Road and north of 31st Street. It's a 184-acre preserve. The forest preserves of Cook County have something called the Next Century Conservation Plan, where their goal is to restore about 30,000 acres back to high quality natural areas. Possum Hollow is part of the Salt Creek landscape, which is in that Next Century Conservation Plan, a high priority for restoration. So one reason why this site was chosen, and not all forest preserves have volunteer groups or stewards, and so one reason why this was chosen is because of the ecological value, as well as it is near Latinx communities in Berwyn, Cicero, and the Chicago neighborhood La Villita, or Little Village. Next is a picture of, this is from our Possum Hollow management plan. So Possum Hollow was supposed to be developed into a residential area. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but towards the bottom of the Possum Hollow, you see like light blue lines, and this indicates sidewalks in Possum Hollow. And there's also sewers that can be found in Possum Hollow. And the Forest Preserves of Cook County acquired Possum Hollow between 1917 to about 1950. And the management goals for Possum Hollow is to restore ecosystem function by managing the site to exhibit native biodiversity and species richness that existed prior to European settlement. As you can see, there is a blue line going through, and that is the Salt Creek. Possum Hollow has rich floodplain and oak-dominated woodland communities. It has level topography and a shallow water table, which means that there's a lot of ephemeral wetlands throughout Possum Hollow. An ephemeral wetland is just a temporary wetland that isn't there all year long. And we've also had the Shedd Aquarium do research in Possum Hollow, looking into amphibian response to habitat restoration. And these sidewalks and sewers were first seen in aerial photos in about the late 1930s. So I had a volunteer once ask me like, oh, when was it supposed to be developed? And this was before I like researched it for the presentation. And I thought it was a lot sooner than the late 1930s. I thought it was like in the 70s or something. So that was kind of news to me. And so I just want to talk about possum. I mean, possums in the name of the site. Possums are in North America. They're also endemic to the Americas, and they originated from South America. The Nahua are a group of indigenous people that can be found in Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and they are the largest group, indigenous group in Mexico. So the Nahua word for a possum is Tlacuache, and Raquel is the one who found the legend of the possum. And I think it's fitting for Latinx Days because the possum has ties to indigenous cultures in Latin America. Yeah, I'll just share the legend of the possum real quick. I found it to be, I don't know, heartwarming. So way back when fire was unknown to humans, and life was pretty difficult, living without fire, not being able to cook their food, fire was released from a star and several trees caught fire. And then the Kinamenten, or giants from the mountains, seized the fire and did not let anyone else have the fire. Villagers tried and died trying to get the fire from the Kinamenten, or the giants, and that's because they organized an army led by a tiger to protect the fire. So a deer, armadillo, and a possum got together, and they're like, well, we want to be able to help these people, these humans out. And it was the possum who stepped up and declared it would bring fire to the people. And the other animals made fun of the possum. They're like, oh, you're too little, you're insignificant. You're not going to be able to do such a big task, an important task. But the possum was on a mission. So then he went to the campsite of the giants, and he just formed a little ball and just kind of stayed put. And he just did some observing and watched the patterns of the army and waited until the tiger was alone watching the fire. So then the possum saw this. The possum was in a little ball, so it rolled up to the fire. It stuck its tail out, put it in the fire. That engulfed in flames, and he grabbed the ember with his mouth, and then he started running for it. And by that time, the tiger realized that that wasn't a rock, that was a little possum. And so he ran, so the tiger chased the possum, and he trampled him, he crushed his bones, and he pretty much beat him very close to death. But the possum wasn't dead, and he was able to bring the fire back to his crew, and was able to share it with the humans. So it was from this, it was at that point where the possum was deemed a hero of humanity. He didn't have any natural defenses, but he used its intelligence and the brave act of getting the fires still shows today by the bald tail on the possum. So, yeah, I just enjoy oral lore, sorry, and just acknowledge that it's, a way for Indigenous people to teach lessons to each other and to keep their history and traditions. All right, so back to the site. Talked about where Possum Hollow is. Now we're going to talk about what we do. So we do ecological restoration, and this is mainly removal of invasive species using tools and an occasional chainsaw. We pretty much do work, if you can see, there's like a gray line. I'm not sure if you can see my arrow, but that's the parking lot. So we pretty much do a lot of work around the parking lot. But when we first started, we wanted to work on the entrance. And we host our volunteer days every Saturday, not every Saturday, every third Saturday from 10 to 12:30. So this is a picture of the entrance, and this was our first goal, was to get rid of this wall of buckthorn and honeysuckle, which pretty much blocked the entrance. You couldn't really see inside. There's a picnic grove if you go in the direction of where the tree is. So that was our first goal of getting that cleared out. And to the right of the picture is 31st Street. So you can't see through this wall. And this is just a close-up of that brush of the honeysuckle and buckthorn. And you can see it's very thick. Not a lot of light is getting down to the soil. It's just looks like a big mess. And two invasive species that we mainly clear is Espino cerval, which is buckthorn, and Madre Selva, which is honeysuckle. So both of these were brought over, but buckthorn came from Eurasia and honeysuckle came from Asia, but they both were brought over as like a landscaping plant. Buckthorn was used as hedgerows, and that's kind of how, so people would plant them in their yards as privacy fences, and it would get into the natural areas. Espino cerval is able to alter the soil's chemistry, and this is lethal to the development of frogs and salamanders, and it also prevents other plants, like native plants, from growing in the area around it. Both shrubs produce berries, which birds love to eat, and that's exactly how they spread. The birds will eat them and then go and poop somewhere, and then you'll have a new population of invasive species. So this is a before picture. Raquel's in the picture. I guess she's there for size purposes. You can see how large this wall is of buckthorn and honeysuckle. If you look at the two trees, focus on the two trees within all that brush, and then this one sticking out, and you'll kind of have an idea of how far we push that wall back at the end of the day. And you can see there's a lot of plants that were under the honeysuckle and buckthorn. There was a lot of spring ephemerals that came up after we cleared this area. And picture, you can see that some of the forest preserves, resource text. Ecological restoration is a very collaborative effort. Collaboration between the forest preserves, volunteers, and their staff. They were there because there was a lot of dead ash trees. So to help make our site a little more safe, they were cutting those ash trees and getting rid of those hazards. I mentioned, ecological restoration is a very collaborative process. So the first year of when we were doing our Possum Hollow Latinx volunteer days, I was a stewardship program, so it was part of my job. But then after that, I got a full-time job with Friends of the Forest Preserves as a crew manager. Picture of my crew up there. And that bottom picture is when I was a stewardship program aide. So yeah, for the first year, it was like part of my job, but then I moved on to another position, and I wanted to continue doing it, continue working and leading with Raquel as a volunteer. And again, I just think it's very important to have Latinx spaces in the environmental community, because the environmental field is dominated, is a space that's dominated by white people. And also the volunteer demographic is a majority, it's made of majority white stewards, and they're also older. A lot of people are retired who are stewards. So, it just makes sense that they have time to give and volunteer. And going back to that culture shock of college, that really did teach me about the importance of holding space. And it's kind of hard to explain, but the best way I can put it is being able to enter an event or a hike or a forest preserve, and being able to just be and not having to explain yourself, and just feeling that freedom of just being yourself without getting questioned, basically, or I guess that's the best way I can put it. And I kind of have a example that recently happened. So now I'm no longer with Friends. I work for the Forest Preserve of Cook County, and we were doing a prescribed burn with another municipality. And so me and my two coworkers went to like the Joliet area, and we were about to do a burn. So we met up with the crew over there, and that crew was mostly white males. And they were asking for our names, just and because you have to sign in. And so I gave my name to the person in charge, and my name is Xochitl. It's a unique name, and I have gotten that all my life pretty much, like, oh, how do you say your name? How do you pronounce it? And he complimented me on my name, saying, oh yeah, it's a very nice name. But then throughout the day, I just kept getting questions from him about and my coworkers noticed this as well. It's like, he was asking me where my family was from, if I was born here, what school did I go to? And it seemed, I don't know why, but he was like focused on me, and it just, and it was, could be seen as like not harmful questions, but it was just something that I've experienced, and just a reminder to me that I am seen as other. And I tried to explain to him, because he was asking me if it's okay to ask, if I'm from here, or if I was born here, if my family's from here. And I told him, I'm like, well, I don't think you would ask that of a white person. And for example, I have one of the coworkers that was with me. He is an Irish American, and his last name is very, it's an Irish last name. And I tried to explain to him, like, no, nobody asked him like if he was from here, if he was born here. And there is a suit of like Irish immigrants that came to America, but I don't know, he didn't feel that it was intrusive at all. And I was like, it did kind of bother me, because I don't understand. Yeah, sorry. So, and that leads me to like kind of identity, thinking about like my identity and stuff. And it's one of the reasons why I've never identified as like American. And that's because to me, when people say American, I don't think they see someone who looks like me. I've definitely identified as like Mexican American. It was funny, in high school, I learned about the term Chicano, and I thought that was like a mixture of like Mexicano and someone from Chicago, and they got Chicano. But I learned later, there's like a whole Chicano movement. So I'm saying all this to like talk about identity, and I mean, I'm sure Latinx, some people might not be familiar with that. And we use Latinx instead of Latino or Latina, because it is a gender neutral term to identify a group of people who are Latin American, or from Latin America in the US. And Spanish is very gendered language, and I acknowledge that there's people who have different gender identities other than women and men. So we want to be inclusive. And I also just want to emphasize too that Latinx is not a race. There are Latinx people of all races, and it makes sense because of, we're trying to cover different, multitudes of countries. And I also want to emphasize that, going along with that, Latinx people are not a monolith. Some people even don't agree with the term Latinx, and some people will use Latine, which is also a gender neutral term, and that they feel that works better in speaking Spanish, and it's able to conjugate in Spanish. So yeah, so just the Latinx, it's, like I said, it covers a multitude of countries, so it's really hard to put that many people into a box. But as humans, that's what we feel comfortable. I feel like that's what we feel comfortable doing to help understand. And so Raquel and I both have families that come from Mexico, and we're aware like the Mexican culture can dominate Latinx spaces. And we try to promote the diversity among Latinx people. And I should say she tries to do this through food, because she's the one who does all the cooking, or is the one who brings food to our volunteer days. And we end each volunteer day with food, and it's a chance for us to like build community with people and just chat and just yeah, just it's just a time to get to know each other better. Raquel and I are also vegetarian, so this is also a vegetarian space. And pictured here, I think some plantain chips and arroz and frijoles. And then Raquel also made some tofu mole, which was really good. She's also bought pupusas in the past. And her mother makes tamales, and it's really, I am happy that she enjoys being able to share food with the group. And that's one way I think all Latinx people show their love is through food, and just it's just one way of building community. Our volunteer days is a space where Spanish, Spanglish, and English is spoken. Raquel is fluent in Spanish, so she takes a lead on speaking Spanish with our volunteers. And also she leads the ID walks. And I am not a fluent Spanish speaker. I grew up with my mom's mom, my grandma, speaking to me in Spanish, and I would reply in English. And so I use the volunteer days as a space to practice my Spanish. And we both also use our volunteer days to learn new nature words in Spanish, because not like espino cerval, that's not something you use in like everyday language. So learning words like that, or oaks, which is robles. Yeah, so it's definitely fun to learn those new nature words. One of my favorite parts of our volunteer days is that we provide space for families to interact with each other and with nature. My family has come out. Raquel's family has come out. She's had her tia and her cousins. My tia's pictured here. My niece has come out. My sister has come out. Raquel's parents have come out. So it's a lot of fun getting our family out and getting them in nature, and trying to, help heal nature together by removing the invasive species. There's a lot of intergenerational interactions at our volunteer days. A lot of grandparents would bring their grandkids to get their volunteer hours for high school. And one way we try to make our volunteer days welcoming to Latinx families is we do try to, Raquel and I do like to sleep in. So the regular volunteer days are like 9. And we start our volunteer days at 10. And we also emphasize like, come when you can. It's not all or nothing. Like if you can come between 11 and 12:30, that's fine. And we do get a lot of kids who absolutely love coming out. There was one time I think we had a group out, and they came on a bus, and this little boy was just like loving using the bow saw. He was cutting invasive species or buckthorn, and then we took a break, and he was just sharing with us like what a great time he was having. And then it was getting close to the time for them to leave. And then Raquel was like, okay, we got about 20 minutes left. And he's like, oh, 20 minutes to cut. And then he wanted to keep cutting, but we were trying to wrap things up so they can be ready for when their bus came. So he was just super excited to remove invasive species. And we also encourage people who can't do the physical part of cutting buckthorn or honeysuckle. If they can't do that, then we just would encourage them to walk around and enjoy nature. And again, going back to the young folks enjoying nature, the father and son here pictured, the son really enjoyed playing in the snow. So there was a time when it was cold out, the snow, it's probably still a foot during the winter time. And he was, during our break, the young boy was just making snow angels, and just like absolutely love being in the snow. And it's just those moments that make me so happy because one, it's not everyone loves winter. So it's nice seeing young kids. I mean, I guess playing in the snow is something that that kids enjoy and love. But yeah, it was just really fun to see him enjoy nature so much. And we do hear from our volunteers that, you know, they've done this type of work because they've done it back home and back home in Mexico. And something Raquel and I talked about is that there are times when families can't go back to their homelands. And our volunteer days are able to bring out those memories of home. And in this photo is Raquel's grandma and mother. They are from Guanajuato, Mexico, and Raquel gets to go out and visit every 2 to 3 years. Yeah, and I just want to share this picture because this is, it's a beautiful landscape, and just to think about all the people who are in the United States thinking about home, which is, you know, with beautiful views and nature. And it, I guess it warms my heart that we're able to try and bring those memories of like being at home and in nature back while we're working at Possum Hollow. So throughout the last 4 years, we've had many different partnerships, worked with many different organizations that work with Latinx youth and adults, such as the Botanic Garden, Instituto de Progreso Latino, Sierra Club, and MWRD. Raquel is alumni to the University of Illinois Latino Latina Alumni Group. We've hosted Out in Nature. They're not Latinx focused, but they do connect people who identify as part of the LGBTQ community. And they, the Out in Nature group works to connect that community to nature. And again, I just really do love to see families out on volunteer days. It's funny seeing them work together to bring down a buckthorn. Here's a picture of the mother and daughter. And then we have a father and son. And volunteer days are definitely a way for kids to see their parents in a different light. One time Raquel was doing a tree ID and she was asking the group to identify a tree, and a father knew that it was an oak. And he started spewing knowledge about its ecology and needing prescribed burns. And it was just a reminder that, you know, Latinx families do have the knowledge about the land, and it's because of their ties to their home and family. One way we promote ourselves is via Facebook. Otherwise, it's through the connections that we already have. So if you get a chance, check out our Facebook, Possum Hollow Reserva Forestal. And we will post when our, and again, our volunteer days are every 3rd Saturday. One of the more recent groups that we've worked with is Juntos 4-H. And I really enjoy working with this group because I like their mission, and it's to help Latino youth and their family gains knowledge on basically how to be college ready. And I like the fact that they work not only, they make sure to involve the parents and the students. So it's not like the parents are just dropping off the kids. They're coming and they're working with the kids and making that connection, which this program has found increased family engagement leads to, you know, an increase in the students' educational success. And with Juntos, so at the end of their program, Maria, our contact for Juntos, put together a celebration day, and she tasked the families to make piñatas. And so each family made a piñata and filled it with candy. One of my favorite ones that is shown here is the coronavirus. And just the creativity of the families is amazing. Yeah, it was just a fun day. This reminded me of like growing up and backyard birthday parties and getting the piñata out and fighting for candy, which you can see in this picture. They broke the piñata, there's candy on the floor, they got their bags, and it brings in like the dads and the uncles to help hoist the piñata. So it definitely was a fun event that day. And then, so Fidencio Marbella, who's the director for Westchester Library, also happens to be one of our volunteers, and he was able to set us up with, because the library is doing a program where they're taking groups out and kayaking. So we were able to take the Juntos 4-H on a kayak trip. It was a very hot day. It was kind of like today, but it was fun. And I mean, this is just one way where, you know, as a volunteer group, we don't usually do kayaking, but through our, you know, luckily Fidencio was able to work with us and we were able to get the families out on the water. And it was just a really great time and experience. And for a family of 3, I was able to step in and paddle with one of the daughters. And yeah, so our volunteer days can be a bridge to other Latinx events. And we also worked with the MWRD. They co-hosted a Latinx Heritage Month Stewardship Day. It was a great day. A lot of people came out. We got some cool swag in the hats. There was food, there's music, and there was poetry reading at the end. All in all, it was a fun day. And so I'll end here. And this is Canelo. This is Raquel's dog. I also bring my dog, but I don't have a picture of my doggy. So Canelo will lead us to any questions that people may have. And I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. And that's all I got. Ryan could come back.
Okay, one second. Okay, well, thank you for that presentation. It's very informative and inspiring. And thank you again for reminding me of the kayak trip last year. That was a very, very hot day.
It was hot, but they still had fun.
Yeah, it was a fun day, but very, very hot.
Very hot.
Stuck under a tunnel at one point. I wanted to say, thank you for the presentation because you had mentioned Berwyn specifically, and I've grown up in Berwyn. That's where I lived for 30 years of my life, and Berwyn, Cicero, and the areas you mentioned, there is no like wilderness. And we were talking a little bit about this before, that since working here with Fidencio, and kind of learning about the forest preserve and everything in nature that's really not that far from Chicago, but It is, because I do remember kind of growing up thinking, we're stuck between Berwyn's between two highways, and then the first sense of wilderness you get is past Harlem Avenue.
Yeah.
And it's I do remember going to the forest preserves with my parents as a kid and thinking, wow, this is like far from home, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So one question that came in through YouTube, and if anyone wants to type in their questions into the chat box, please do. But on average, like, how many people attend the work days of Possum Hollow?
I would say between 10, I would say 10 is about average, but it can be up to 20 depending. Like for the MWRD event, we got more people.
So I know you mentioned like the LGBTQ group, but have you done any work with any other diverse groups that work to bring people to nature that normally would kind of be blocked by like the gatekeeping or?
Other than other groups that work with Latinx youth and adults, but not outside of that, and not outside of out in nature.
Okay. Another one that came in through YouTube. So, what would be the most interesting thing you've seen or encountered at a work day, or like a favorite experience you had?
Favorite experience. Let me think about that one. I think just seeing people interact with nature. Like some of our volunteers will like, we get a lot of woodpeckers at Possum Hollow. So I think just seeing people notice nature, like, a mom telling her kid to like, oh, listen, you hear that? That's the woodpecker. And just like, I guess, yeah, seeing people enjoy nature, I guess, is what is most interesting.
Now you mentioned that a lot of people that had done this work from their homelands, at some time, and now they're living in the Chicago area. Do you find that a lot of the people that attend, you said it was intergenerational, but are these people that have worked in nature before, whether here or in another country, or are these people kind of just like born, like from the city, from the suburbs, that kind of didn't realize this was here?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, where I honestly, I didn't go to the forest preserves until I worked in them. So I think it's people who, when they go to their homeland, a lot of the times it's we have a lot of Mexican volunteers. So when they go to Mexico, that's the type of work that they do to maintain their land. So, and then they come here, and like you're saying, yeah, they're in the city and they're just not aware, or maybe they just haven't had the opportunity to get out in nature.
Okay, well, I haven't seen any more questions coming through the chat on Zoom. Let me just double check Facebook. Yeah, so I think that will conclude our program. Did you have anything else to add, Xochitl?
No, just a reminder, our volunteer days are every third Saturday, 10 to 12:30. There also are other Latinx events at the Letter Red Schoolhouse. I think there is an upcoming bilingual event, frog monitoring, on May 21st. at 7 p.m. And that's the Little Red Schoolhouse over in Palos, and that's like 95th and Willow Springs Road.
Cool. So yes, thank you again for this wonderful presentation and sharing your experiences. It was very informative and inspirational.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. And you all have a good evening now.
Enjoy the heat.
Yeah.